Welcome you all, ladies and gentlemen, to this presentation by topic Disaster Management and Mitigation. I am KILI JUVITA, CHONWA, a student in the Chemistry Department, Faculty of Science, University of Boya. The topic Disaster Management and Mitigation was chosen because it is crucial in our world of today, which is faced with climate change and various disasters. And so certain objectives are to be met at the end of this presentation, which include defining and differentiating between hazard and disaster, explaining the 4 phases of disaster management, giving the different types of disaster and the examples, and being able as well to explain the various cycles of disaster management, the various stages of the disaster management cycle. To begin, I will start by defining what disaster and hazard all about. A hazard is a potentially dangerous source or an event that can cause human loss, property loss, or can cause serious negative impacts on the environment. Examples of hazards include oil spills, wars, earthquakes, floods, and many more. Whereas disaster is actually a result of the interaction between hazard and vulnerability. In the first decade of the 21st century, the world experienced about 3,496 natural disasters, originating from floods, storms, heat waves, and drought. All of these are very crucial to the disaster management strategies, which are needed to bring sustainability and stability within the environment or community in which we live. Now, I will give the floor to my colleague, EFFENDI, who is going to talk on different types of disasters and give us examples. Thank you so much for listening.
As earlier said by my colleagues, my name is EFFENDI, student from the Chemistry Department, and I will define disaster management. Disaster management is the process of planning, organizing, and implementing measures to minimize the impact of disasters. Disaster management is a complex process that requires the involvement of varieties of stakeholders, such as the government policies, civil society, and private sector. And my colleagues will further talk on the phases of disaster management.
I'm called POUTOUGNIGNI, also a student from the Chemistry Department, and I will be giving a presentation about the 4 major phases used in disaster management. Actually, there are 4 phases, which are: we have mitigation, we have pre-preparedness, we have the response, and the recovery. I will be focusing more on mitigation. What is mitigation? Mitigation actually refers to the set of activities that can be used to prevent future emergency or to minimize their effect. Actually, these measures include: we have purchase flood and fire insurance for your home, and also developing early warning systems. We can also talk about educating the population about the safety measures against earthquakes and other natural disasters. So my colleague will be talking more on the other phase of disaster management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Putin.
My name is CHEFOR. I'm a student of the Department of Chemistry, University of Boya. I'm to talk on disaster preparedness as a phase of disaster management. First of all, what is disaster preparedness? Disaster preparedness, these are steps of processing, organizing, and coordinating the different measures to reduce the impact of disaster. The following measures include: we have developing a disaster plan. A disaster plan is a written document which outlines the steps taken before disaster, during disaster, and after disaster. We also talk of building relationships with friends, neighbors, which will help during the disaster process in evacuation and actually sheltering. We also talk of staying informed through the internet, the TV stations, radio stations, and we also talk of assembling an emergency kit. An emergency kit is simply a collection of supplies such as food, water, first aid, which will help during the process of disaster. So I'm going to give the stage to my colleague who will talk on disaster response as a phase of disaster management. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
I'm called Alexandra, a student in the Chemistry Department, Faculty of Science in the University of Neville. I'm here to present on response, which is a phase in disaster management. Response phase is a very important phase that occurs immediately after a disaster strikes. It involves actions taken to safeguard lives, infrastructures, and the environment. The following response activities are important during an emergency: evacuating people from affected areas to safer locations, providing prompt and effective medical care to victims of the disaster, evaluating the extent of damage to buildings, roads, bridges, and many others in order to plan recovery efforts. Okay, we now continue with the next stage of disaster management.
As Speaker said, JOELLE CHARLOT from the Chemistry Department, Faculty of Science, presenting on recovery measures to take after a disaster. Okay, so measures or preventive measures recovery measures are in 3 steps. The first step is providing assistance. When I talk about providing assistance, talk about financially, housing, and otherwise to the individuals and family that have been displaced during the disaster. Secondly, we have to rebuild and repair of materials and infrastructure such as roads and houses for the surrounding. And finally, while providing business loans and taxes to relieve this and stimulate the economy, because after a disaster the economy is down. Now all of that can be summarized in a cycle. All the recovery stores and all the disaster can be summarized in a cycle. That is, firstly, we have before a disaster. Before a disaster, activities need to be taken, such as during the population, awareness of the population, stabilizing of old building, and now during the disaster, necessary measures also is taken, such as provision of water, evacuation, and health services. Then now, finally, after the disaster, we have to increase measures such as early recovery and rehabilitation of the affected community. So that is just the basis of recovery. Thank you.
Considering the presentation we have just made on disaster management and mitigation, we wish to call on each and every one of us to make an individual or personal disaster management plan or disaster preparedness plan. This can be done by considering your area of habitat, that is where you live, the possible disaster that can occur in your area of habitat, the various ways you can, excuse me, the possible means of evacuation that can be used to fight such a disaster, and how you can relate or communicate with family members. For this presentation, we are members of the chemistry department. Myself, I'm KILI JUVITA, CHONWA, and this is
Nwanyek.
NISONJE MIRIAM.
KETSIAM Nathaniel. JUVITA CHARLOT.
ASUE.
Thank you so much, and we hope this information or this presentation goes a long way to help combat the negative impacts of disaster. Thank you.
Thank you.